we have our engine case pretty much as tight as we can get it. So now it's time to move on to our head studs, and also we're going to do some piston ring filing. I think we'll start first with our head studs. These should be fairly straightforward. However, some of the things on this engine, even though they seem fairly straightforward, always seems to present one or two issues we need to look at and overcome. So what I'm using here is a new replacement head stud. These are from Porsche, and these would be virtually identical to the ones I pulled out of here. So the stud with yellow tape on it, that's the original. So in size, configuration, and tensile strength, they're exactly the same this would have been originally equipped with. There are some issues regarding head studs. If you're going to a higher tensile strength or using different cylinders, you can really get yourself into trouble there. So this is something you really want to research, and research well before you just assume that a higher grade stud or a different cylinder is going to work out for you. In this case, we're just doing a stock build, so this is what we want to be using. Let me roll through these on one side, get them set up, and we'll take a look at them and then take on the other ones step by step. Okay, so we got one side put together here, really pretty straightforward. Learned a couple things along the way. Let's go ahead and roll this guy over. We'll set up the other side and see exactly what's involved. Okay, so the first thing I like to do anytime I'm working around open engine block or case, I just want to make sure that I don't have any open cavities where we could have an accident. Plugging everything up is really just a good idea. And I like paper towels. So let's say we shove rags in here versus paper towels. The thing with rags, rags can lint. So if lint or linen gets inside your engine, that can present a problem. So paper will disintegrate and break down and make its way through the system without any problems. Lint can pile up and create some problems. So paper towels, usually a pretty safe thing to use in that respect. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to take a look down inside all our drilled and tapped areas. We're looking for debris or anything that could be an issue once we get started here. So we don't want anything down in there. So when we start running our stud down in there, it's going to back up against it and create some problems where we're trying to over torque and push it down in there. So I like to do a visual check first for everything, and then we'll run something down there just to take a general measurement. So I'm just doing a basic depth check using an old push rod here with a piece of tape on there just to mark basically where we are in general. I just want to see if we're consistent when these were drilled at the factory, that they're all drilled and tapped approximately the same distance. We don't have one that's deeper or shallower than the others. In this case, we seem to be pretty good. Okay, so I think we're going to be good now. We can just start running those in there. And then, so I have already pre-cleaned with brake cleaner the threads we're going to run down into the case, and I'm using blue Loctite 243. Just going to run it down in there. In my case, the studs and the case are fairly dry. I can get some of these to go down in there, but some of them I have to wrench down in there with a nut. Okay, so the first one is bottomed out. I'm going to go ahead and run the other three in this cylinder. And then what we're going to do is we're going to check our measurement to see where we need to be by the time we run these down, snug them, see approximately where they're going to level out, because the case was drilled and tapped at the factory to whatever preset they had back there. So what I'm getting on my case, you may not necessarily be getting on your case. So that's why we just need to see where we are for this particular engine. I want to just try and be even if I can across here. If I'm off a little bit, I'm not going to worry about it. The main thing is that they're all the way down. The main thing is that we're 135 to 137 millimeters in that range, and everything is landing where it needs to be. So. this is where we can have the accident right here. Drop one of these guys down in here. Alright, let's see where we are. 137. We can nut that down a little bit. Alright, let's just see and feel how tight that is. Okay, so right there I'm bottomed. Okay, I can go a little bit more, but I don't want to go any more than that. That's it. 136.5. That's about what I was coming up with on the other side. So we're going to run all those down. We're going to feel them bottom out, and then we're going to adjust them right in or about that rate. Right there. And then just using some paper towel and an awl, I'm just trying to mop up or wick up the excess Loctite. Let that drain into the paper towel. Alright, so everything is seated and it feels tight and they feel right. I don't have anything that's really loose or anything really out of range in relation to each other. About as far down in there as we want to push it, and I'm coming up with 136.5 millimeters. Okay, and then before we move on here, let's just mock up our number one cylinder here, and the purpose of that is just to show you how far our threads are coming through our head in a mock-up, so that you know and understand the relationship between the distance into the case here and the consequences as how much threads we have come through the head. So let's get that mocked up, take a look, and see what we have. Okay, let's see if we can get down in there with a flashlight. So when we torque all these down, we're going to be using some fresh new barrel nuts and a thick washer to go with that. You can see the thread distance on the barrel nut. We look down in there, or try to look down in there. Okay, well, it's really hard to get some perspective with the camera, but you can see how much the head stud is protruding through. So if you were off a millimeter or two, I don't think it's going to be the end of the world. The main thing is that they're bottomed out, they're tight, and they're fairly parallel to each other. Alright, so while our Loctite is setting up, let's go ahead and move on to some ring filing and checking our end gaps. So what I'm doing here is basically segregating everything, because at this point we want to keep track of all our piston rings, pistons, and keep them with their respective cylinders. So everything is numbered. I'm using paper plates to keep everything segregated and clean so we don't have any contamination on them as we work with them. Over here is my little makeshift ring filing bench. So I've already gone through a couple, and so far so good. This is number 3 here. Let's go ahead and check this one out, see exactly what's involved, what kind of measurement we're after, and the kind of tooling I'm using here to get exactly the desired end gap that we want. And then looking at our supplied sheet here of recommended end gap sizes from JE. So our bore size is 81 millimeter, which converts to 3.18898 of an inch. They're recommending for the top ring this bore size times 45 thousandths of an inch, will get us about 14.5 thousandths end gap. And for our second ring, bore size, which is this guy here, times 50,000. So the second ring, a little bit bigger than the first ring, and there's a reason for that. We'll talk about that more when we put our pistons together. But for now, we're just going to target on these two sizes. And so these are minimum sizes, so if anything, we're going to go a little bit larger than that. As you look down the graph here, we're only bigger here, we're not smaller. So we don't want to be too tight because we don't want our end gaps touching. All right, and then for our tooling, I'm just using this hand crank style. And what we want to be doing is we want to be taking the wheel into the face of the ring, and the bottom side of the ring, we want the wheel coming out. So we want it coming in and out is a direction, like so. This is new, so to get my wheel kind of dialed in and ready to start grinding our rings, I took an old ring from one of our Molly pistons, oiled our stone here, and just kind of broke it in just to kind of deburr it and settle it in where it likes it. I can use an old ring to do that, and that seems to tune the wheel up for us and get us ready. And our grit is about 140 to 170 grit on our stone. So if you need one of these, I have these available in our store, so you can check out our online store in the video description down below. Click on that link and you can find those in there, and that'll get you through your piston ring filing. So I have oiled these cylinders when I picked them up from Ollie's, and I just want to take some paper towel in there and just kind of clean off any dust and debris that might be in there, or any kind of grit that would affect our piston ring end gap measuring. And then I want to take my rings very carefully and clean them just to make sure we don't have any grit or anything on them. This is our oil ring, and I'm just putting it down in there and rolling it over. I've taken a used tape hub and just using that for my guide. Get down in there about 1.25 inches, and then I'm checking, in this case, for 15 thousandths. And there we are right there, 15 thousandths. And then to take them out, I just roll them back out, close them together very carefully, and then set up our next one, our oil ring. Okay, so our oil rings check out. Next I'm going to do our number 2 ring. This is indicated with an N on the top. Just put a Sharpie mark on there, just for easier reference for me while I'm working with it. Just set those down in there. Okay, I'll end up with 18 thou, which is what my other ones are coming up with. And then our top ring is also marked for up. So that's our 15th thou. That's definitely not going to go. So let's pull that guy out of there and file her up. So what we want to do is we want to file only one side, not both sides. So I'm just going to take it on this side. I'm going to feel for what I feel is 90 degrees in parallel to this guy. And I'm just slowly moving my wheel. This is something that we're not putting pressure into the wheel. We're not all bulling a china cabinet trying to get it ground down and hurry up. It's a real tedious, slow-going, all patience kind of a task here. We want to go slow. We don't want to chip anything. We don't want to damage anything, because if we damage something here, we're going to go back to ordering rings. There's going to be a massive delay and all kinds of problems. So patience and just go real slow is what we need to do. I'm just letting the stone do the work. Getting it going and getting it started. And once it starts to grind, I can see, how to improve my angle or what I need to do here to correct anything. Okay, it's much more square now. And every time we check our cylinder bore, wipe off any debris, make sure there's nothing on there. if you have a little burr or some kind of edge on there, I take a really fine file and pull it backwards. The idea is that we want 90 degrees here, 90 degrees here, here, and here. No chamfering, no beveling, no filing. We want to just deburr it and keep it sharp and square, just like this side. When you bring it together, 90 degrees and the right size. All right, let's check this one. Checking it for square. Okay, so we've opened her up a little bit, but not much. We've basically cleaned up the angle, and we've got some more filing to do. This process here, I'll go in and out, in and out. I'll probably do this 4 or 5 more times before we start getting into range. So real slow, a little bit at a time. Each one of these rings can take 10 to 15 minutes, but the payoff is going to be really good for us if we just do a nice job. Okay, try and get in here with the camera a little bit better angle if I can get it. We want really good hold down pressure up against these tabs here. And just smooth pulling of the wheel. Let the wheel do the work. Okay, let's check it again. It's tight, but it'll go, and really what we're after is 14.5 to 15 thou. Alright, let's head back over to our head studs. We're going to set them up and rotate our engine. Okay, so our studs have been Loctited and in place for about 2 days, so I know our Loctite is secure in there now, and things aren't going to be flexing and moving around. So what I want to do now, a little lacquer thinner, microfiber rag, get them all cleaned up. And the whole idea of the oil is just some anti-corrosion. And then rubber bands so we can rotate our engine. And the reason I want my Loctite to set up for a couple days is in case there's any rubber band tension pulling on these, we don't accidentally pull them inward. Feels just right. Okay guys, looks like we got us an engine going here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.